Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Catholic Citizen. I'm your host, Peter Range. It's great to be with you. And let me just say, if you're on the side of the Satanists, you might want to reconsider your position. And this new mandate that's coming out, folks, if we don't stand up and say no now, it's just going to continue. Joe Biden is on record telling you that the federal government has no business mandating vaccines, even before he was president. But now he's mandating vaccines to a company. You've got 100 people. Well, if it's 100 people, why can't it be 90? Why can't it be 80? Why can't it be 50? Why can't it be everybody? According to President Joe Biden. We're talking about this and more in just a second here on the Catholic Citizen. My brothers and sisters in Christ, always great to be with you week in and week out here on the Catholic Citizen as we help you look at the news from a Catholic perspective to form your conscience, to help you be the saint that you've been called to be. But we can't continue this show. We can't continue to awaken Catholic, to awaken the nation to the reality that Jesus Christ has come and he's died for us. He's become flesh with us, so that we might experience divine life. It's why I've never feared during this COVID crisis. I mean, yes, I'm human. I've had fear, but I've never let that fear dictate the way that I live. And that's been the most disappointing thing for me in the midst of all of this, is that fear has dictated us so much so that we were willing to allow patients in nursing homes to die alone by themselves because we were fearful of what's going on. We're still doing this today in this country. But before we get into more of that, let's go ahead and talk about the wonderful people at Casa Bea Cleaning who have been so gracious to us to help keep the lights on here. But Casa Bea Cleaning won't be around forever, so we need your help as well. But please, if you need your home cleaned, your work cleaned, please patron Casa Bea. They're pro-life. It's why they sponsor the show. So we want to patron them for their great support and for the people that they are and the excellent work they do in keeping your home or your work clean. Secondly, if you're just an individual who wants to help keep this show going, keep the truth getting out there, please join us at thecatholicitizen.com, thecatholicitizen.com. For just $3 a month, you can receive all my show notes, all these magical notes here that I work so hard every Thursday night to put together for you because I want to be recent. So I look at what's going on in the news throughout the week, and then Thursday night I put it all together. My wife is, still upset because it takes time away from us, and I'm upset about that too. But we both recognize the importance of this show. But it can't continue unless we have you at thecatholicitizen.com. Just donating just a little bit, even just $3, maybe $10 a month to help keep the show going. Thank you to our patrons who are committed to keeping the show going. We tremendously appreciate your support. All right, now on today's week's news. All right, so much to cover. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to go deep into each one of these issues as much as I want to. But in July, Jen Psaki, who is the spokesperson for the administration, said, quote, "It is not the role of the federal government to mandate vaccines." That was the spokesperson for the Biden administration in July. Okay, Biden himself said a couple weeks ago that he was not going to mandate the vaccines. And he said, even as when he was running for president, after he was just elected, he said that he himself would not mandate the vaccine if he was indeed elected. But now he's announced a sweeping plan that could literally impact hundreds of millions of Americans to get COVID-19 shot. Now, here's a few issues that I have. A lot of people are talking about this is about public health. This is about making sure that people are safety. First of all, I don't like the way, go watch his press conference if you haven't watched it. I don't like the way that he demeans and talks down to those of us who have not received the vaccine. He looks into the camera and says, "What are you waiting for?" Okay, number one, I'm waiting for a vaccine which is completely not produced and or tested using any aborted fetal cell lines. That's first what I'm waiting for. Number two, I'm waiting for a normal amount of years that a vaccine is tested before we just simply accept it. Look, we've been told, for example, that, look, there's no problems for mothers who are breastfeeding or women to take this vaccine. But all of a sudden now, they've just announced this past week that they're investing $1.7 million to understand why is this messing with women's fertility cycles. So interesting. They told us there's no issues here, no problems, but then suddenly they're studying what's going on with women's cycles. Interesting. Interesting that they've already FDA completely approved it and cleared it, although the studies they said won't be fully done or announced until 2023. Interesting. Maybe I'm waiting, President Biden, for some more of these studies that your own FDA and NIH is testing to be done with, to start with. And another point on this, how do I trust people from these organizations, the FDA or NIH, who literally, it just came out this week, it's one of the stories in here, The Intercept has released 900 pages, praise God, for the Freedom of Information Act, which demonstrate that Dr. Anthony Fauci has lied to the American people before Congress. He said, we did not fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan lab in China, and in fact, we did. The same Dr. Anthony Fauci who's approved the scalps taken off aborted fetuses and placed on mice just to test them at the University of Pittsburgh. Let's see what happens when we take the scalps of aborted fetuses and we put them on mice. So maybe I'm waiting for people that I can trust when it comes to this vaccine and this virus before I take something and just place it in my body, not to mention all the things that they're putting in modern vaccines today. You know, there's so many different conditions that have arisen over the past 20, 30 years. We're like, where are these coming from? Look, my own daughter had an adverse reaction to a vaccine. I've seen personally what vaccines can do to individuals. I'm not anti-vaccine. Look, my father, 3 weeks before he was going to receive the polio vaccine, got polio. I've seen the good that vaccines can do. However, we can't simply blindly accept everything. That is not the scientific method. The scientific method is to question things. But here's why this is not about public health. So he arbitrarily says every company with 100 or more employees. Why is it 100? Why not 90? Why not 80? I'm sure maybe soon it will be. But here's why it's not about public health. If it really was, if he was really this is more about looking to his base and saying, look, guys, I know you've been complaining. I know you want me out there saying something, so here it is. Because if this is really about your public health, why is this not mandated on immigrants who are illegally crossing the border? Look, you have hundreds of thousands of immigrants, many who are great people. They're fleeing terrible conditions in the Southern Hemisphere. But they are not mandated to get the vaccine when they cross. So hundreds of thousands of people flooding into the country every month, not vaccinated, not required to get the vaccine. But you, an American citizen, if you work at a company with 100 or more employees, mandated to get the vaccine. If this was really about public health, folks, why would these immigrants not be required to get the vaccine? Allie Beth Stuckey tweeted this. How are unvaccinated people, because Biden mentioned over and over again that his patience is wearing thin with the unvaccinated. Look, if it was really about convincing the unvaccinated to get vaccinated, would he go out before in the press conference and belittle people? What are you waiting for? Is that really going to convince me and others to get vaccinated? But how are the unvaccinated people a threat to the vaccinated people if the vaccine protects the vaccinated? How are unvaccinated people a threat to the vaccinated if the vaccine is supposed to protect the vaccinated? And the vaccinated actually are the ones more at danger right now of actually spreading the virus. Because if you're unvaccinated, you have the symptoms. You understand, okay, I'm sick, I need to stay home. But all the vaccine does, it doesn't stop you from getting the virus. It lessens the symptoms. So you're going out and about spreading the darn virus because you have less symptoms. You're more a threat to the unvaccinated than the vaccinated. It's being sued immediately. Republican South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem filed a push a lawsuit. Andy Briggs from Republican from Arizona has promised to sue as well, introducing legislation. I don't think ultimately it's going to constitutionally stand. It can't. But if you're a company, take a stand now, folks. Look, if we don't take a stand as Americans, we don't just say no to this anymore, it's not going to stop. And if you're saying, oh, Peter, you're using hyperbole here, like what are they really going to do next? Please read what is happening right now in the state of Australia. They've arrested teenagers for going outside and watching a sunset. They are contact tracing every single individual. They're belittling people who are unvaccinated and who dare go get a cup of coffee outside their house. Please go look at what's happening on Australia. It's becoming a totalitarian state. It's a Western democracy, which is becoming a totalitarian state. That can happen here. That can happen here if we don't actually follow our conscience, follow the science. The science has adapted. We're not sitting at the beginning of the pandemic again. We're not sitting at a place where we think that masks can actually stop a virus which is small. You can smell your farts through the mask, folks. Anthony Fauci has gone back and forth between masks don't work. His private emails say masks don't work. He said publicly then masks do work. Now he said 2 masks work. I mean, folks, this is the same man who's lied before Congress. All of this is a distraction. Notice how quickly Afghanistan, the situation kind of goes away. You know why? Because women who are protesting their rights just this week in Afghanistan were beaten with electrical cords and told to go home and don't you dare come out and protest again. And told by the Taliban, oh, by the way, you're lucky you were not beheaded. The Taliban also murdered a pregnant policewoman in front of her family last Saturday night. Her son, Mohammed Hanif, said, quote, they killed our mother before our eyes. They killed her with her knife. Her crime? She was pregnant, by the way. Her crime? She was a policewoman. She was a woman who dared to work. The country we've handed back to these evil people. This is reported by CNN. This is not a crazy right-wing source, folks. Meanwhile, this past week, the Taliban held our people hostage on the tarmac in the airport. CBS News reported multiple planes that are ready to take American citizens and green card holders out of the country are being denied permission to leave by the Taliban. Praise God, finally last night, one of those planes got out, but for 5 days, held on the tarmac by the Taliban. And what does our U.S. State Department do? Come out and, praises the Taliban. The Taliban have been cooperative in facilitating the departure of American citizens and lawful permanent residents on charter flights. They have shown flexibility, and they have been businesslike and professional in our dealings with them in this effort. This is a positive first step, says Emily Horn, the U.S. National Security Council spokeswoman. Yeah, because if we look at it like it was a hostage situation like it was, it wouldn't make the administration look very good, was it? But the Taliban's been very cooperative. They only held him back for 5 days. I mean, we're okay with that. Why in the world we left any American citizen behind is beyond me. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department was blocking private rescue flights from even getting out at the very end. Rick Clay, who runs the private rescue group Plan B, told Fox News that the State Department is the only thing preventing the flights that he was organizing from leaving Afghanistan. 2 other American individuals separately involved in evacuation efforts, whom the Fox News is not naming to avoid jeopardizing ongoing rescue efforts, similarly said that the State Department is the sole entity preventing their charter flights from leaving Afghanistan. Quote, it's not the Taliban that's holding them up, as much as it sickens me to say that. It's the United States government. Why? The people could only conjecture that it would make the Biden administration look bad that it was private companies actually getting Americans out and not the State Department themselves. Now, look, we've talked about this in previous shows, the extreme way that the pro-life law is being attacked in Texas. One, by the abortion industry. So one clinic in Fort Worth area performed 67 abortions in the course of 17 hours. They thought that the law was going into effect, so let's get as many women in and out of the clinic as we can. With one doctor, in one day, 67 abortions. But don't worry, people who support abortion in Texas, including the current administration. The Satanists are coming to the rescue. The Satanic Temple, a religious group based in Salem, Massachusetts, has joined the backlash against the measure. The organization lobbied the FDA to provide abortion pills to its Texas members, arguing it qualifies as an exemption as a faith-based group that supports the procedure. According to the San Antonio Current. Their claim is that abortion is a part of their satanic rituals. So let's pause for a moment. The Satanists claiming that abortion is a part of their satanic rituals, it must be allowed to continue because they're a faith-based group. And our Catholic president has decided that he's going to put forward a whole of government effort, his words, not mine, to end this law in Texas. In fact, the Department of Justice has just sued the state of Texas to stop this law. That is our Catholic president, folks. Tell me why, again, we voted for him. I didn't. But tell me why you did. It is the fundamental, foundational issue of life. If the human person doesn't have the right to live, they don't have the right to immigrate to good health care, to good education. If you can't get that fundamental issue right, you don't get any other issue right. And he stood squarely against our Catholic teaching. Squarely against what the U.S. bishop said. This is the fundamental issue we have to be concerned about. Fundamentally against what Pope Benedict said. This is a non-negotiable. He's, again, we started the show demonstrating, he said, even just a couple of weeks ago, we're not going to mandate vaccines from the federal government. He said it as when he was campaigning. He said it as president. His press secretary said it. It's not the federal government's place to do that. And now we have federal mandates for vaccines. So is it any wonder that he flip-flopped on this issue as well? In 2015, he said that life begins at conception. Announcing his strong support of Roe v. Wade in the past couple weeks, he says now that I don't agree that life begins at the moment of conception. So it just depends upon who's he talking to. He's been in politics for 50 years, folks. He told America Magazine in 2015, I'm prepared to accept that the moment of conception is a human life and being. A couple weeks ago, it's not a human life. Doesn't fit my narrative right now. Speaking of lies in the media, I'm sure you caught this story out of Oklahoma where Rolling Stone pushed out a story where ivermectin, which is being used it's got the 2015 Nobel Peace Prize for being used in humans. So they tweeted out a story. It was picked up by Rachel Maddow from MSNBC. I mean, she literally has 1 million people watching her every week, saying that people couldn't get shooting victims couldn't get help in local hospitals because people who were taking ivermectin, which they just called a horse dewormer, were filling up the ambulances. Found out the story wasn't true at all. Completely untrue. Made up by a doctor who doesn't even work at the hospital anymore. But retweeted by national TV hosts and retweeted by the Rolling Stone magazine. Speaking of lies, let's go to Dr. Anthony Fauci right now, okay? Newly released documents provide details of U.S.-funded research on several types of coronavirus at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. The Intercept has obtained more than 900 pages of documents detailing the work of EcoHealth Alliance, a U.S.-based health organization that used federal money to fund bat coronavirus research at the Chinese laboratory. Looking at this research, Richard H. Ebright, Board of Governors Professor of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Rutgers University, said this, quote, the documents make it clear that assertions by the NIH Director Francis Collins and the NIAID Director Anthony Fauci that the NIH did not support gain-of-function research or potential pandemic pathogen enhancement at WIV are untruthful. Don't take my word for it. Go look up the story. How this is not all over the media, that the leading health expert for our country has simply lied to the American people before Congress. But you don't see I'm looking at CNN right here, and all I see is an article, COVID-19 is crushing this corner of rural America, right? Again, another fear tactic that the media has been using all from the beginning. And look, we have said from the beginning here on this show, we take COVID-19 seriously. We know people personally who have been impacted by it. But if you're at a certain age group, it's not as impactful as if you're at a certain other age group. The median age of death in the United States of America is 78 years old. The median age of death for COVID patients is 78 years old. If you bring to it comorbidities, yes, you are at risk. A lot of the individuals who are in the hospitals right now, if you look at the statistics, I was just talking to a doctor about this yesterday. If you look at the statistics, they're obese. If you're not healthy to start with, yes, this can be a very dangerous disease. If you have pre-existing conditions, yes, this can be a very dangerous disease. For the vast majority, 98% of the people who survive this, if they get it, it's not as dangerous. But we're acting like this is the Spanish flu. It's not. It's not. We've shut down the entire economy. We've led to people starving. We've led to suicides. We've led to old people dying in nursing homes by themselves because we've scared the hell out of people. We don't have to be scared about this, folks. Speaking of things that should be all over the news, last story here. Larry Elder, he's running for governor in the state of California. California Governor Gavin Newsom is being recalled at the moment. So there's a vote whether or not to recall him and then who to elect in office. Now, Larry Elder, who's running against him, he's a Republican. He's very conservative. If you think that there's systemic racism in the country, go watch Larry Elder's interview he did with David Rubin. David Rubin is a classic liberal, was a Democrat for many, many years. He's actually living in a quote-unquote gay marriage. And he has this great podcast where he brings interesting people on from the left and right, everywhere it may be, to talk about things. And he has honest, really good discussions. Now, he had Larry Elder on because he wanted to talk about racism. Conservative, black, African-American. So he figured this should be a good conversation. And so he talks to him about whether or not there's systemic racism in the country. Larry Elder completely eviscerates him with every, statistic, you name it. So go check it out if you think there's systemic racism in the country. With that being said, Larry Elder is now running for governor in the state of California. Obviously, he draws the ire of some people because some of the positions that he holds. Now, just this week, he was in a campaign stop, and a white woman with a gorilla mask on. Now, we know the history of the tropes that people have done, equating African Americans to monkeys and gorillas and things of that nature. So this white woman wears a gorilla mask, comes up and throws an egg at Larry Elder. Thankfully, it misses his head, but then she gets into a scuffle with one of the security guards. It's all on Twitter, all on tape. You can watch it. He has to be rushed away. There's other menacing individuals who get in the security officer's face and so on and so forth. They're yelling things at him. Praise God, he's okay. Now, imagine for a moment that Larry Elder was a Democrat. Could become the first African-American governor of the state of California, making history. Do you think that we may have heard of this story a little bit? But no, because Larry Elder is conservative, there's not a peep, not a peep from the mainstream media. Great article from the National Review looking at why this isn't the biggest story in America. And the author says, quote, "Please do not insult me by pretending that you do not understand the context and history of black folks being subjected to gorilla references. Please do not tell me that a person wearing a gorilla mask who targeted a Democrat would not be tagged as guilty of the most vicious variety of racism. Please do not tell me that progressives can't be racist." Now, I don't know if the woman is a super right-winger or if the woman is a super progressive who did this. To me, it doesn't matter. To me, it was a very clear racist act towards an African-American running to become governor of the state of California. But you don't hear anything about it. Anything. Dan Crenshaw from Texas said this, that a black gubernatorial candidate can have eggs thrown at him by a white woman in a gorilla mask with zero condemnation or coverage tells you all you need to know about the left and their media allies. Everything is racist. I mean, let me pause from Dan here. I mean, the Muppets are racist nowadays. Dan continues, but unless racism is targeted towards a Republican, then it's not racist anymore. Then we don't know. Let's wait. Let's pause. Maybe it wasn't a racist act. when I read this stuff and I see kind of what's going on in the country, I do, again, I become frustrated, become sad. It's sad to see how we just kind of go along with the flow. So many good Americans just kind of go along with the flow when it comes to whether it's the vaccines or the masks or whatever, and they just kind of say, yeah, well, I just kind of gonna accept what the experts, quote unquote, have to say. And it's why we're at where we're at right now in this nation, where a private company, if you have 100 employees, is going to be mandated to give those employees the vaccine. Now, if they don't mandate that their employees get the vaccine, they're fined $14,000. $14,000. This is the president of the United States. He's the head of the government, telling private companies that they have to vaccinate, their employees have to be vaccinated. If they don't, they're fined $14,000. Does that sound like the United States of America to you? Do you think this is the end? Friends, if we don't stand up and tell the government that we're not going to do these restrictive measures for a virus with a 98% survival rate, 98, close to 99% survival rate, what else are we going to capitulate over, friends? There comes a time that we have to take a stand, and it might make us unpopular. It might make us people think, oh, they're just crazy wackos. It's okay. It's okay if we follow our conscience in the midst of this. So again, President Biden, until a vaccine is produced with no connection to aborted fetuses, until we have a little bit more testing, a little bit more honesty, transparency from the NIH and FDA, yeah, I'm going to wait. And yeah, you're probably going to flag this show. And probably because, I talked about ivermectin, all those different things. That's okay. I'm going to continue to preach the truth. I'm going to continue to follow my conscience. I'm going to continue to read every website that I can, pro and anti-vax, pro and anti-mask. I'll continue to read everything. I'm not afraid. You should be more afraid of the side that is shutting down people than you are of the people who just want to have a free discussion about it. Who's more dangerous? All right, it's 9/11 tomorrow. 20 years commemorating the anniversary of a day that I'm sure changed your life as it changed mine. I remember exactly where I was my sophomore year at John Carroll University, where my friend of mine was walking down the dorm room and said, turn on the TV, we're under attack. I turned on the TV and I saw the second plane fly into the World Trade Centers. And, it's a moment you'll never forget, watching what took place that day. How can your understanding of the world not be challenged and changed and look at everything differently? And one of the things I've been doing is listening to NPR and listening to the stories over and over again of the individuals who were there that day and listening to their experiences, the phone calls from the husbands and wives calling from their certain death from the World Trade Centers. It's heartbreaking. I encourage you to do it, though, so we remember what took place. I encourage you to do that for a few different reasons. One, to remember the feeling we had that day and the day after, and what's most important about loving our neighbor, no matter if they are Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, and caring for them no matter what. I offer you those resources to remember because it's important to understand who we're handing the country back to in Afghanistan. We went into Afghanistan because the plotters of 9/11 were harbored there by the Taliban themselves. So we've just handed the country back that perpetrated the attacks on 9/11 to the Taliban. The Taliban harbored Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and they now are in control of that country again. We have to remember that day because it's our hope for the future as well. There was a great story NPR did, and I can't remember the gentleman's name at the moment, but he was being hailed as a hero because he was. He carried somebody in a wheelchair down 36 flights of stairs out of the World Trade Center building to save that individual. And it always strikes just something in my heart because my dad had a fear of fires, actually, and dying in a fire. He was in a wheelchair and, not being able to get out. and this guy carried somebody in a wheelchair out of the building to save them. And the interviewer was asking him, like, you're a hero. Thank you. How did you do this? And he's like, don't call me a hero. Don't call me a hero. The hero were those firefighters who, as I was running out of the building with the individual in the wheelchair, they were running up the stairs in the building, looking at every one of us in the eyes and telling us, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. He said that those firefighters, you could see it in their eyes. They weren't sure. They didn't know what was going on, but they were running to save people. They were running to risk everything that they have to save people, and telling the people going down the stairs, everything's going to be okay. Friends, I believe that everything is going to be okay, because those firefighters, those first responders, our police force, our EMTs, those people who run into danger when danger is scary, danger is isolating, danger is something that can kill us. Those people are running towards it. And that's our call as Catholic citizens as well, to storm the gates of hell, not to run away, not to be fearful. But those firefighters, and the spirit of those firefighters who saw people in danger, that spirit lives in us today. Let's run towards the danger today. Let's run towards the trouble. Let's run towards those areas of society where, yes, we might get ourselves in a little bit of trouble. We might put ourselves at risk. We might be ostracized. But that's the call we have as Catholic Christians, to storm the gates of hell, to not be afraid. Friends, as we remember 9/11, let's remember their sacrifice, and let's honor our fallen heroes by being courageous today and not bowing back from the battle we've been called to fight. The fight for life, the fight for truth, and the fight